I imagine that the idea of vigilante fiction is becoming more controversial in this day and age, and for understandable reasons. We might not agree with a film or any work of art being subject to such controversy, but it is easy to understand where such controversy comes from. Note how Dirty Harry isn't considered as cool as he used to, owing to current, warranted, sensitivity surrounding police brutality. I would argue that Harry Callahan himself is not necessarily glorified in that 1971 film. Its so sequels do a poorer job of maintaining this impression. Although John Milius did have a hand in the screenplay for Dirty Harry, so make of that whatever you will. Something like 1974's Death Wish is probably the archetypal vigilante film. An audience sympathizes with an ordinary armed citizen going above the law to murder criminals, judge, jury, executioner. Incidentally, although I generally enjoy Michael Winner's films and certainly Charles Bronson action vehicles, Death Wish is not a major favourite of mine. It's fine, whatever. I've seen far better, including from Michael Winner and including from his Death Wish films. Death Wish 3 is the true classic, as everyone knows. But anyway, though the general public may have sided with cinematic vigilantes during the 20th century, in the 21st any discourse is set by numerous reputation curers on the magical internet. These days it might be more glamorous to, as tabloid newspapers may once had, demonize sections of the population in order to promote oneself as the moral arbiter. So naturally, when Harry Brown exists and feels controversial, I find myself, I suppose surprisingly, very concerned about its communicated message to an audience. Oh no, are the self-imposed moral arbiters right? Should the creators of, and fans of, Harry Brown feel bad for furthering its potential harm? I wasn't trying to imply I support vigilante fiction or, God forbid, vigilante action in the real world. Really, I enjoy some vigilante films, some not. Hence my mentioning of Death Wish earlier, not a huge favourite of mine, for example. I dig 1971's Dirty Harry quite a bit. I don't particularly support vigilante justice either, that's clearly quite unsound. That being said, self-imposed moral arbiters annoy me, and I'm aware some of it exists around Harry Brown. You know, I really enjoyed this film as a piece of dramatic, gritty pulp, but I cannot blame someone for detesting its rather brazen socio-political implications. It cannot be denied that Harry Brown is implying that the quasi-contemporary UK or London law enforcement is unable to, or unwilling or incompetent to deal with youth gang violence who are making the nation/city more miserable for the older generations, whose values the young spit on. The film even makes a point of making sure that we don't confuse its references to the Northern Irish Troubles as a parallel conjuring sympathy for young urban street gangs. On the contrary, Michael Caine looks right at the camera. The Northern Irish Catholics were, at least, fighting for a cause, at least. But these little lad/chav brats just want to have fun. Downstream perhaps of the rather acclaimed Dead Man's Shoes, with some Eden Lake-esque psycho teenagers thrown in, Harry Brown seems to think that A Clockwork Orange's opening scenes were prophecies. Why could Harry Brown the film be singled out for concern? Note how no one came down on John Wick for promoting vigilante outlaw justice. John Wick was a comic book film without the pre-existing source material. And wait, comic book superhero films dominated commercial cinema of the 2010s. They have vigilantes, and both Marvel and DC even attempted to acknowledge that inevitable above-the-law dilemma, both in early 2016. Those don't take place in the real world. Harry Brown reeks of frustration at reading too many tragic stories in what might be considered Tory tabloids. Yes, violent crime exists. Yes, there are irredeemable youth, and sometimes the parents validate their behaviour out of basic narcissism. And yes, the police require sufficient evidence in order to press any charges against citizens of a democratic nation. Oh, but look, he's going into the tunnel, a symbol of the local area's subsequent safety, thanks in part to vigilante justice, or a metaphor for how Harry Brown has now at last descended to his enemies' ominous haven. Director Daniel Barber was a lot less vague when Michael Caine was telling the audience that the youth deserved to be killed without trial because of their own psychotic behaviour. If Barber felt as though Harry Brown had truly sunk into the depraved depths of his victims, I'm sure he'd have let us know that he felt that way, and wouldn't have been as vague as he was. How resolutely fascistic. Now, I happen to enjoy the films of Leni Riefenstahl for their technical creativity, aesthetic grandeur, so I can forgive a film's fascism if I have to. Actually, being fascistic isn't even the worst thing a film can be. It could be a film directed by Sam Mendes, or Greta Gerwig, or God forbid, Paul W.S. Anderson. As I said earlier, Harry Brown is terrific exploitative pulp. In fact, its realistic veneer, its grounded locality and impassioned ruthlessness, all elements of concern toward this film as a piece of ethics, assists me in enjoying it as a cinema experience. I can imagine this film having two polarized responses in particular. There'd be those who think that this is a real film about real issues, and that those who have a problem with the film are pencil-pushing PC cretins. And then there are those who think that this film is evidence of toxic masculinity, and those championing it are rabid, old-world right-wingers. My opinion is that the film, I'm not commenting on its followers or detractors, but I'm sure there is some truth to my previous hypothetical. My opinion is that this film features a clear condemnation of toxic masculinity if I've ever seen it. Whether it offers a solution to mindless violence that isn't cleverer violence, I am wholly unsure. And it also features a character who expresses the symbolic opposition to this eye for an eye madness. This character is, of course, Emily Mortimer's Alice Frampton, although she, just like Grace Kelly's pacifist Quaker at High Noon, way back when, learns that sometimes violence can save your life. So shut up and be more grateful. But yeah, we all still love High Noon in spite of its bizarre, inconsistent messaging there. So maybe we can forgive a film for certain failings on the part of its message. A lot of people still seem to admire Leni Riefenstahl's films, some of D.W. Griffith's work. I don't know. Well, I said I can appreciate Harry Brown as revenge pulp, like some nasty Italian picture of the 1970s, say. Although it's apparent, and they are apparent, it'd be disingenuous to claim that it's just a movie. The apparent politics in Harry Brown are, well, somewhat troubling. These are my thoughts on 2009's Harry Brown. I won't deny the enjoyment I receive from this film, although its moral implications actually do rub me a little bit the wrong way. Without condemning anyone who likes this film as inferior, as I also am willing to admit admiring this film as a revenge romp, Harry Brown is, well, you know what, I'm not going to use that cliche and, let's be honest, trite word, problematic, so rather, I'll say this. Harry Brown is problematical. No, seriously. Harry Brown is naughty. But I'm willing to be convinced otherwise. Do let me know what you think, particularly if you happen to be from the UK. You might offer far more insight than I am actually capable of. I'm just some pretentious Australian film geek. What do I know? Oh well. Have a fantastic day.